My fork hovers halfway to my mouth, laden with sweet potato casserole, as my father's words slice through the muted clatter of Thanksgiving dinner. You're nothing but a parasite living off us. It's time you found somewhere else to stay. The sweet potato on my fork suddenly appears strange, unappealing, almost alien. Around me, the dining room sinks into a silence so heavy I can hear the faint ticking of the antique clock in the living room, the very same clock I paid to have repaired just last month. I lift my eyes, searching my mother's face for some sign of support, some trace of protest. But Denise keeps her gaze lowered, meticulously rearranging the untouched green beans on her plate. Across the table, my 17-year-old sister Tessa sits frozen, her widened eyes fixed on the half-empty glass of water in front of her. What makes the betrayal cut so deeply is the timing. I spent the entire morning preparing this meal, basting the turkey, mashing potatoes until smooth, baking 3 separate pies, while they lounged in front of the television watching football. Barely 20 minutes earlier, I had shared the news of my promotion at work, hoping for pride or at least acknowledgement. Now the steam rises from dishes I prepared with my own hands, while my father announces that I no longer belong here. The irony is impossible to ignore. My name is printed on the electric bill that keeps the lights glowing above this table, the water bill that filled every glass, the grocery receipt for every ingredient laid out before us, and the insurance policy that paid for my mother's doctor's appointment just last week. And still, somehow, I am considered the burden. 3 months ago, when Mom lost her job at the accounting firm, I stepped in immediately, without hesitation. Expenses accumulated faster than explanations, and Frank's limited hours at the hardware store barely covered the mortgage. I took on everything else: utilities, groceries, insurance, even medical costs. With every account transferred into my name, my father's demeanor toward me shifted, growing colder, more resentful. His signature, once required for every household decision, had become unnecessary, his sense of authority steadily eroding. 2 weeks ago, I overheard him speaking to Mr. Simmons, the neighbor, their conversation drifting through the open kitchen window. "It's not right," he had complained bitterly, leaning against the fence. "A man losing control of his own home. She acts like she owns everything now." Only when he mentioned my name did I realize he was talking about me. Now Frank watches me from across the table, jaw tight, waiting for tears, for outrage, for resistance. When I simply continue eating, his grip tightens around his fork until his knuckles pale. The sweet potato tastes like nothing, flavorless and hollow, yet I chew carefully, swallow, and take another bite. "Did you hear what I said?" His voice rises, irritation seeping into every word. "You need to be out by the weekend." My hands tremble slightly, though not from fear. Something deeper stirs inside me, a quiet shift, a fundamental change. I place my fork down, fold my napkin beside my plate, and meet his eyes directly. I understand perfectly. The words settle in the air, calm and measured, devoid of tears or anger. Frank blinks, clearly unsettled by my composure. The silence stretches uncomfortably, until my mother finally speaks. Not in my defense, but with a different concern altogether. "Blair," she says softly, almost hurriedly, "you'll still pay the medical insurance this month, won't you? I have that appointment on Tuesday." And there it is, the full truth revealed with brutal clarity. I am not a daughter to them, not family, only a source of financial support, a signature at the bottom of checks, a provider, nothing more. I stand and gather my plate, picking up Tessa's empty glass as well. "Of course, Mom," I reply steadily, despite the emptiness spreading through my chest. "I'll handle it before I leave." As I walk toward the kitchen, my thoughts catalog everything within these walls connected to my name. The upgraded internet service Tessa needed for school, the refrigerator I replaced when the old one failed in July, the utility accounts transferred to me after final warnings arrived. I rinse my plate in the sink, carefully scraping the untouched food into the garbage disposal. Through the window above the sink, I see my car parked in the driveway, the only possession I own outright, free from any connection to this house. At least that will remain mine. Behind me, Tessa's chair scrapes softly against the floor as she brings her plate to the kitchen. She sets it beside the sink without meeting my gaze, but her fingertips brush briefly against my wrist, a fleeting gesture, the closest thing to comfort I felt in months. The digital clock on my nightstand flashes 1:18 a.m. as I fold another sweater into my suitcase. Sleep is impossible, Frank's words echoing relentlessly in my mind. I have been packing for hours, moving mechanically while my thoughts spiral. I reach into my desk drawer for the financial documents I plan to sort: insurance papers, utility statements, grocery receipts, but beneath them I notice something unexpected, a bank statement bearing Frank's name. Odd. Paper statements had disappeared months ago after Mom lost her job and everything switched to electronic billing. I pull out one statement, then another, and another. A small stack covering the last 3 months, all linked to an account I have never seen before. An account whose balance steadily increased while my own savings dwindled to keep this household afloat. My hands tremble as I sink on the edge of the bed. The numbers blur until I force my eyes to focus. $4,000 in July, $5,000 in August, nearly $7,000 now. Sorting further, I uncover a glossy brochure from a boat dealership, Frank's handwriting scattered across the margins. Down payment $5,500 circled in blue ink. Scheduled delivery after Thanksgiving underlined twice. A fishing boat. While I struggled to pay medical bills and school expenses, he had been quietly saving for luxury. There is more. A notepad listing November utility deadlines, my name scribbled beside them with question marks, followed by the words "after bills paid" heavily underlined. They had planned this carefully, waiting until I covered November's expenses before forcing me out. A soft knock interrupts my thoughts. The door opens just enough for Tessa to slip inside, her gaze widening as she surveys the packed boxes and open suitcases scattered around the room. "You're really leaving?" she asks quietly, lingering near the doorway. "Dad didn't give me much of a choice," I reply, slipping the bank statements into my purse. She bites her lower lip. "Mom said they need your room for storage now that Dad's buying that boat." The casual confirmation strikes like a physical blow. Boat? The fishing boat he placed a deposit on last month. Tessa's voice lowers to a whisper. "I heard them planning everything weeks ago, waiting until after you paid November's bills." "You knew?" The sense of betrayal deepens, extending even toward her. Tears gather in her eyes. "I was scared to tell you. Dad said anyone who warned you would be next." I want to be angry, but the fear in her expression is undeniable. She is still a child trapped in the same manipulative environment I am escaping. "There's more," she continues, glancing nervously toward the hallway. "Those medical appointments Mom's been going to, the ones you've been covering with your insurance? What about them?" Last week she came home with swollen lips. She told the doctor said she couldn't use a straw for 2 days. Tessa rolls her eyes in imitation of our mother. "It wasn't a checkup, Blair. It was cosmetic fillers." The room seems to tilt. I have been surviving on instant noodles to stretch my budget, while my mother uses my insurance for cosmetic procedures. I open my banking app and show Tessa the balance. $763.42. 3 months ago, I had over $9,000 saved. This is what remains after supporting everyone here. If I had stayed another month, I would have been completely broke. The reality crystallizes as I speak. I had nearly destroyed my financial future for a family that viewed me only as a source of income. "Dad said if you try to take any furniture, he'll report you for theft," Tessa adds quietly. "Even the things you bought." Of course he did. I glance around the room. The desk I purchased for remote work, the bookshelf I assembled myself, the bedding from my first paycheck. He also contacted the bank today about removing your name from the utility accounts. The urgency becomes clear. I must secure housing, protect what remains of my finances, disentangle myself before further damage is done. I pull a shoebox from beneath my bed. Inside are carefully organized receipts for every purchase I made for the household. The desk, the refrigerator, Tessa's laptop, the living room carpet, utility statements bearing my name. Evidence that I have carried this family while they plotted against me. Tessa watches silently as I sort through the papers. "Blair?" she finally asks. "Yes?" "What would you do if you were me? If you had to choose between standing up for what's right and keeping peace in the only home you know?" As I sift through receipts in the stillness of night, I face the same question. Should I confront them with proof of their deception, or simply leave and allow them to face the consequences themselves? Confrontation might bring closure, but a quiet departure would spare me further pain. What do you do when the people who should love you unconditionally only value what you provide? Looking at my sister, still trapped in the same toxic environment, I realize there is no simple answer for either of us. 3 days later, while I am at lunch break at my part-time job, my Aunt Phyllis's voice crackles through the phone, each word landing like a swap. "Honestly, Blair, I never thought you'd abandon your parents when they needed you most." I grip the phone tighter, knuckles whitening. Only 3 days since Thanksgiving, and Frank has already reshaped the narrative for the family. "Did Dad mention he kicked me out?" I ask evenly. "He said you left them struggling after a small disagreement," she replies, judgment thick in her tone. "They're arranging a family meeting at my house this weekend to discuss your behavior." Of course they are, a setting where they control the story. "I'm sure they are," I say, ending the call before she can continue. After my shift, I come to my friend's apartment. I sink onto the edge of Drew's pull-out couch, now my temporary bed. My entire life is reduced to 4 boxes and 2 suitcases stacked against the wall. Everything else sits in my car downstairs. 25 years condensed into what I could gather in 2 frantic hours while my parents attended church. My phone buzzes again. Another message from a cousin claiming I've broken Mom's heart. I ignore it. Each notification sends a surge of anxiety through me, wondering which relative will attack next. When Drew returns from her hospital shift, she finds me sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by paperwork. "Operation Financial Freedom? Going well?" she asks, dropping her bag near the door. "Almost done," I reply, tapping my pen against a notebook filled with account details. I've canceled automatic payments for their utilities, removed myself from their phone plan, and requested removal from their internet account. I don't mention the customer service representative who laughed when I explained I was voluntarily removing financial responsibility for my parents. "Good," Drew says, settling beside me. "Your parents can clean up their own mess." The weight of beginning again presses heavily on my chest. My savings balance is alarmingly low, barely enough for a security deposit, let alone rent. "You sure your roommate doesn't mind me staying here?" I ask. "Max? He's thrilled to have—" The front door bursts open and Max storms in, his enormous golden retriever charging ahead. "Blair," Max declares enthusiastically, "you have to meet the world's worst therapist," but he accepts payment in treats. He throws a tennis ball across the apartment, and Baxter launches after it with flailing paws and an exuberant wagging tail. The doc returns moments later, dropping the slobber-covered ball into my lap, eyes shining with eager expectation. "He thinks you need this more than he does," Max says, his expression serious despite the ridiculousness of the moment. Sometimes the best therapy has 4 legs and terrible breath. When Baxter nudges my hand with his wet nose, I find myself laughing for the first time in days. The sound surprises me, almost foreign to my ears. 5 days after my escape, I sit at Drew's kitchen table, laptop open to job listings that might offer better pay. My current position covers my basic needs, but not the kind of emergency fund I'll need to truly rebuild. My phone lights up with my mother's name. I consider letting it go to voicemail, but something tells me to answer. "What have you done?" Denise's voice comes through, sharp and panicked. "The power's out, the internet's down, and my insurance was declined at my appointment." I take a slow breath, feeling strangely calm. I stopped paying for things that weren't my responsibility. "But you can't just leave us like this. We're your family." The desperation in her voice might have moved me once, but now I hear the manipulation beneath it. "Family doesn't call family a leech at Thanksgiving dinner," I say, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "Your father didn't mean it." Her tone shifts to something softer, placating. "You know how he gets." "I do know. That's the problem." I end the call and set my phone down carefully, as if it might burn me. Later that evening, Drew leans over my shoulder as I create new passwords for my email and banking accounts. "I noticed some suspicious login attempts on your accounts," she says, pointing to the security alerts. "We should set up fraud alerts just to be safe." The contrast isn't lost on me. Drew asks before borrowing my charging cable, while my family felt entitled to everything I owned. Even now, Drew stands a respectful distance away, waiting for my response instead of grabbing the laptop to do it herself. "Good idea," I say. "Thanks." That night, I find myself scrolling through apartment listings within my budget. Small studios, most of them, but they represent something I've never fully had, a space that's completely mine, where no one can tell me I don't belong. I don't ask anyone's opinion about the neighborhoods, or worry whether the kitchens are big enough for family gatherings. The decisions are mine alone. The next morning, I head to a local credit union and open a new account under just my name. I transfer every penny from my old account, the one my parents know about. My phone pings with a text from Tessa. "Mom looking for your banking info. Says she needs to check something. Don't trust her." I've barely finished reading when my phone explodes with notifications. 6 missed calls from home in the last hour. Simultaneously, an email appears. "Fraud alert, password reset attempt on your banking app." I stare at the screen, anger rising like a tide. They're not just trying to guilt me into coming back. They're trying to take what little I have left. A day later, the bank representative's voice carries a note of concern that feels strangely validating. "Miss Mitchell, we've blocked 3 separate password reset attempts from your parents' home address in the last 24 hours. I grip the phone tighter, pacing the small confines of Drew's spare bedroom that has become my temporary sanctuary. "And you're certain they can't access anything?" "Positive. We flagged your account for enhanced security measures. Any changes will require in-person verification with photo ID." My chest loosens slightly as I thank her and end the call, adding her name to my growing documentation notebook. Methodical calls have yielded similar results: credit cards secured, utilities formally removed from my name, and medical insurance accounts protected with additional verification steps. The electric company representative had sounded almost impressed. "Smart move contacting us. Your mother called yesterday trying to reinstate service in your name without authorization." Each confirmation acts like a brick in the wall I'm building between my former life and whatever comes next. Not a wall of anger, though that simmers beneath the surface, but of protection, solid, necessary, and entirely of my own design. Drew appears in the doorway with a steaming mug. "Tea with honey? Thought you could use it after all those calls." I accept it gratefully, wrapping my hands around the warmth. "Last one done. Nobody can access or change anything without my direct approval now." Drew nods approvingly. "How does it feel?" Before I can answer, a thunderous pounding rattles the apartment door. The tea sloshes over my fingers as Drew and I exchange startled glances. "Blair," my father's voice booms through the wood, "open this door right now." Drew motions for me to stay put, but I'm already moving. This confrontation has been inevitable since the moment I walked out. The pounding intensifies as I approach, each impact like a physical blow. Through the peephole, I see my father's face, flushed and contorted with rage. I've seen directed at bill collectors, telemarketers, and now me. "I know you're in there." Another series of blows makes the doorframe shudder. "You think you can just abandon your family and destroy our lives?" A door opens across the hall, and Mrs. Perkins, a retiree who baked cookies for Drew when he first moved in, peers out cautiously. Her eyes widen at the sight of Frank pounding and shouting. "Young man," she calls, her voice quavering but determined, "I've already called building security." Frank whirls toward her. "Mind your own business, lady. This is between me and my daughter." "Your behavior is my business when it disturbs the peace," she retorts, pulling her robe tighter around herself. Frank turns back to the door, his voice dropping to something more dangerous. "Blair, if you don't open this door right now, I'll..." The threat transforms into action as he steps back and kicks the door hard enough to splinter the wood around the lock. Mrs. Perkins gasps and retreats inside her apartment. My hands tremble as I dial 911, speaking quietly to the dispatcher while Frank continues his assault on the door. Through the damaged wood, I hear the elevator ding, followed by heavy footsteps. "Sir, step away from the door immediately." The authoritative voice of the building security guard cuts through Frank's shouts. "This is my daughter's place. I have every right." "You have no right to damage property or disturb residents." "Police have been called." Frank's response is lost in the sound of sirens approaching outside. Minutes later, I watch through the peephole as two officers escort my father down the hallway, his wrists cuffed behind his back, while he continues to shout that I'm the one destroying our family. When the police officer returns to take my statement, I provide it calmly, describing the financial manipulation, the unauthorized access attempts, and today's outburst, with the same detached precision I've used in my documentation notebook. The officer, Rodriguez, according to his nameplate, nods thoughtfully as he takes notes. "Would you like to press charges for the attempted break-in?" The question hangs in the air as Drew returns from speaking with building management about the damaged door. "Yes," I say, the words small but firm, "and I'd like to file for a restraining order." Later, as I watch the police car drive away with my father in the back seat, I wonder, was filing an official report too harsh a response to years of manipulation, or was it the necessary step to protect myself from further harm? Drew squeezes my shoulder gently. "Max is bringing home some security cameras for the entrance. We'll set them up tonight." I nod, grateful for the practical support that asks nothing in return. My phone buzzes with a text from Tessa. "Mom took your laptop and camera from your room, said they're collateral for what you owe them." The message lands like a stone in my stomach. More theft to add to the emotional robbery they've committed for years. I thumb a quick response. "Do you know where she took them?" Tessa's reply comes almost instantly. "Heard her on the phone with Parkway Pawn. Said she got $300 for both." Gasping, I show Drew the message, anger rising fresh and hot in my throat. "Those were worth over $2,000. Do you have the receipts, serial numbers?" I nod, thinking of the meticulous documentation I've maintained for tax purposes. "Everything." An hour later, Officer Williams takes my theft report with appropriate seriousness, examining my purchase receipts and noting the serial numbers. "Pawning someone else's property is a criminal offense," she explains, her tone professional but kind. "We'll contact the shop and recover your items." The system that felt so often stacked against me now works in my service, a strange reversal that leaves me lightheaded with possibility. That evening, my phone begins lighting up with calls from relatives I haven't spoken to in months. Aunt Sarah's message is the first I listen to. "Blair, honey, I heard about Frank's arrest. I'm so sorry. We had no idea things were so bad." The neighbors who witnessed Frank's outburst have apparently shared their observations, shifting the public narrative my parents tried to control. The story is spreading, cracks forming in the facade my parents constructed. As I help Max mount the security camera above Drew's door, another text from my mother arrives. The casual entitlement of her words makes my jaw clench. "I had to pawn your camera and laptop to cover the electric bill you left us with, Parkway Pawn on 4th Street.
You owe me $300 plus interest. In card. I pass the phone to Drew, who reads it and shakes her head in disbelief. The delusion is almost impressive, she mutters, handing it back. I save the message as evidence, my anger not at her audacity, but at how long I allowed myself to believe I deserved such treatment. The revelation settles into determination as I finish securing the camera that will capture any future attempts to invade the new boundaries I've built. This time, I'm the one watching. My phone buzzes against the coffee table, my mother's name flashing on the screen. I've been waiting for this call. 3 days since I filed the police report about my stolen laptop and camera, and finally, they're ready to negotiate. Blair, Mom's voice trembles slightly. I've been thinking about everything, and I want to propose a compromise. I say nothing, letting the silence stretch between us. In the background, I hear the television playing the same game show that used to fill our living room every weekday at this hour. If you drop that ridiculous theft report, you can come back home. She pauses, clears her throat. We'll let you continue living here, of course. Your room is still exactly as you left it. The rehearsed quality of her words is unmistakable. I picture Dad hovering nearby, nodding approval at her performance. And Blair, she continues when I don't respond. I think we should discuss your state of mind lately. Frank and I are concerned that you might be having some kind of breakdown. That's something our friends and family would understand better than what you're claiming happened. The fret lands with perfect clarity. Drop the charges or be labeled unstable. I take a slow breath. I have copies of every bill I've paid for the last 6 months, I say, my voice steady. I have bank statements showing transfers to your account. I have text messages asking me to pay for your cosmetic procedures that you claimed were medical necessities. I pause. Would you like me to present all of that as evidence?
The silence on the other end tells me everything I need to know. The next morning, Officer Williams follows my car to my parents' house. Her police cruiser parked in the driveway sends a clear message to the neighbors who've been fed my father's lies. As we walk to the front door, I notice curtains twitching in windows across the street. Mom answers the door, her smile faltering when she sees the officer. Mrs. Mitchell, Officer Williams says, I'm here to accompany Blair while she retrieves her remaining belongings. Inside, the house feels smaller than I remember. Mom hovers nearby as I head straight for my bedroom, Officer Williams following close behind. I've prepared copies of all my financial contributions, I tell the officer, handing her a folder I've been compiling. Utilities, groceries, medical bills, the new refrigerator I purchased in July, all with receipts. Officer Williams flips through the pages, her eyebrows rising. You paid for all of this while living here? Yes, for the past 6 months since my mother lost her job. Mom appears in the doorway, arms crossed. That furniture belongs to the family, Blair. You can't just take everything. I pull a stack of receipts from my bag and hold them up. I have receipts for everything I'm taking. Would you like to see them? Officer Williams studies my mother's face, then glances back at the financial records. The surprise in her eyes is unmistakable. Mrs. Mitchell, these documents show your daughter has been supporting this household almost entirely on her own. Mom's mouth opens, then closes. She retreats down the hallway without another word. I work methodically, packing books, clothes, and the remaining items that are unquestionably mine. Through my bedroom window, I can see the neighbors watching from their porches, pretending to water plants or check mail. Let them see. Let them know the truth. When the last box is loaded into my car, I turn to lock the front door one final time. The sound of an engine draws my attention to the street. My car, my other car that I'd left parked at Drew's apartment, pulls into the driveway, my father behind the wheel. My stomach drops. The spare key. I'd forgotten about the spare key I'd given them for emergencies. Dad steps out, jingling my keys in his hand. His expression is triumphant as he walks toward me. We need to discuss what you owe us before you take this too, he says, gesturing toward the vehicle I'm about to drive away in. I set down the box I'm holding and reach into my purse, pulling out a folder of documents I've been carrying for precisely this moment. This is the title to that car, I say, holding up the paper, and this is the registration, both in my name. Officer Williams steps forward. Sir, that vehicle is registered to Blair. You need to hand over the keys immediately. The color drains from Dad's face as he looks from the documents to the officer. His hand tightens around the keys. I paid for her college, her braces, 18 years of... The keys, Mr. Mitchell. Officer Williams extends her hand. Slowly, Dad's fingers uncurl. The keys drop into the officer's palm with a soft jingle. As she passes them to me, I see something I've never witnessed before, my father's complete deflation. The man who has towered over our family for decades suddenly looks small, diminished. Come near me or my property again, I say, my voice clear and calm, and I'll file for a restraining order. I slide into my car, adjust the mirror, and turn the key. As I pull away from the curb, I see the neighbors still watching.
witnesses to the final act of our family drama. Mrs. Henderson from next door doesn't even pretend to be checking her mailbox anymore. She stands on her lawn, phone in hand, no doubt already spreading the news. In my rearview mirror, Tessa appears in the doorway. She's caught between worlds, one foot in the house where our parents remain, one hand raised in a tentative wave to me. Her face reflects both sorrow and something else, admiration perhaps, the strength she hasn't yet found for herself. I'm 3 blocks away when my phone buzzes with a text. Tessa, they're blaming me now. What do I do? The light ahead turns red. I press the brake and stare at the screen, watching those 3 dots appear as she types something else, then disappear. My sister, the one innocent party in all of this, now stands where I once did, bearing the weight of our parents' manipulation. The light changes to green, but I remain still, cars honking behind me as I consider what comes next. Sunlight streams through gauzy curtains I chose myself, painting one patterns across the hardwood floors of my apartment. 3 months have passed since I drove away from my parents' house, with Officer Williams' business card tucked in my wallet. The difference between then and now still catches me by surprise sometimes. I run my fingers along the edge of my desk, where neatly organized bills fan out like a deck of cards. Electricity, water, internet, renter's insurance, all in my name, all comfortably within my budget. No one else's financial emergency is hiding between the envelopes. My bank statement sits open beside them, the numbers growing modestly but steadily each month. The emergency fund I depleted supporting my family is slowly rebuilding itself. 6 months of security, that's my goal. I've already reached 2. The quiet contentment of making decisions without defending them feels like a luxury I'm still getting used to. Last weekend, I painted an accent wall deep teal without asking anyone's permission or hearing how I'd regret the color choice. The freedom to make even small choices feels enormous. A year later, my apartment buzzes with the gentle hum of conversation and laughter. I slide a golden brown turkey pawn onto my dining table, smaller than last year's but cooked to perfection. The irony of hosting Thanksgiving isn't lost on me. Can I help with anything? Tessa asks, hovering uncertainly by the kitchen counter. My sister looks different now, taller somehow, though she hasn't grown an inch. Maybe it's the confidence she's developing away from our parents' shadow. Your company is contribution enough, I tell her, the words flowing naturally. How different from the tally of expenses I once kept in my head, measuring my worth by what I provided. I move around my space with an ease that would have seemed impossible last November. The dishes don't match perfectly, the table is secondhand, but everything here is genuinely mine, chosen with care rather than acquired through obligation. Drew raises her glass as we settle around the table. To found family and boundaries worth keeping. Max and Tessa lift their glasses in response. My sister has flourished since moving into her college dorm 3 months ago. I helped her navigate financial aid forms and housing applications, knowledge from my own journey becoming stepping stones for hers. Later, as Tessa and I sort through scholarship applications at my kitchen counter, she mentions the latest family update. They lost the house last month, she says quietly. Dad's still blaming the bank, the economy, everyone but himself. They're staying with Uncle Rick, but he's already dropping hints about them finding their own place. I nod, glancing at the stack of unopened letters on my bookshelf. 5 envelopes, all from my parents, all unread. Setting boundaries doesn't mean I don't sometimes wonder what they say. They still blame you for everything, Tessa continues, her pen tapping against the scholarship form. But honestly, they're just facing what would have happened anyway. Your money was just postponing the inevitable. I help her highlight a key section on the housing assistance application, thinking about choices and consequences. As I help Tessa build her independent life, I sometimes wondered if I should respond to my parents' attempts to reconnect. Is maintaining complete separation the healthiest choice when family has betrayed you so deeply? Or is there value in allowing limited contact on your own terms? What would you do when those who should have protected you want back into your life after you've finally found peace without them?